This is the Louie T Network. Hey, either you're outside or you're
in the lab room.
Who else can it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome. You are in the lab room. I, of course, am your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. Week number 15 in the National Football League. Monday Night Football. We're putting a cap on Week 15. Chicago Bears, the Bears, at home taking on the New Orleans Saints. Here's an opportunity for the Saints to reclaim first place in the division. Panthers, with a win and a Falcons loss on Sunday, were able to get back into first place for the first time in a long time. And so now the Panthers, playing with a little bit of confidence, they drubbed this same Saints team 2 weeks ago in New Orleans, come back home, beat Tampa Bay. They're playing with the utmost confidence right now, are the Carolina Panthers. Meanwhile, it's a totally different story for the Saints. They had a total meltdown after that Panthers loss, 41-10 at home. Sean Payton released Joe Morgan, benched Kenny Vaccaro, ruffled a few feathers, shook some things up, had everybody walking on eggshells. I mean, this team was supposed to look totally different on Monday Night Football, and it's crazy that you can have that much turmoil, that much shakeup, and still look up in the standings and say, hey, if we win tonight, we're back in first place in the division. And so it's always nice when you can make wholesale changes, shake some things up, and still have a legitimate shot at making the postseason. And that's what's in front of the Saints. I mean, I'm like a little kid with the I'm like a little kid with the Saints right now. I turned my back on the Saints a little bit. Like, it's not fully turned around, but I'm almost at the point where I've turned, because remember, when I did the mid-season review, and I basically said that this was the Saints' division to lose. And I felt so good about where the Saints were at that time. Remember, they had just beat the Panthers on Thursday Night Football. They were 4-4. They were going home for 3 straight. I just knew that the Saints were going to take off, run away with this division. Could you imagine? Had they had just won 2 out of those 3 home games, they didn't have to win all 3, just 2 out of those 3. To lose all 3, though, had they won 2 out of those 3 home games, this division wouldn't even be close. We'd be talking about this division already being wrapped up in the Saints having already won the division. But instead, they lose all 3 of those home games. They go to Pittsburgh, win, which nobody saw that coming. They go back home, and you're thinking, okay, they're on track. Now, after that Pittsburgh win, that was huge on the road. Then they go home and lay that egg, and they put up that dud against Carolina and get drubbed. And so I haven't turned my back all the way, but I feel like a little kid. I'm like, I'm not talking to you right now. I'm not talking to you, New Orleans. I'm not your friend. And you're like, hey, but what if I win at home next week against Atlanta? Then I start listening, because I expect you to beat Chicago on Monday night. Chicago's a bad football team. They're lost right now. Okay, Mark Tresman, dead man walking, okay? So I expect you to go on the road and beat Chicago. So I'm not going to be impressed if you win this game. You're supposed to win this game. Now, if you blow them out, hey, good for you. But I expect you to win this game, so you really can't impress me on Monday. But if you go home, all of a sudden now, arms folded, all of a sudden now you win at home? I'm listening. What'd you just say? Maybe we can be friends. I'm listening. So if you're in New Orleans right now, I'm not buying what you're selling. Basically is what I'm saying to you. I stuck my neck out on the line for this Saints team. I staked a claim in the Saints and said, hey, this is the team that I'm giving my blessings to win this division. And then you put egg on my face, you pulled my pants down, you pointed, you laughed. Hey, look, that's fine. You're not going to do it to me again, though. So I'm pulling my pants back up, pulling my britches up. They're on tight now. I don't know if you can see them, but they're on tight now. They're not going anywhere. I've wiped the egg off my face. I'm good. I've already moved on to Atlanta, and I've hitched my wagon to the Falcons. And I don't like Mike Smith as their head coach. He made some dumb decisions down the stretch. And I need Julio to be healthy, but they've already beaten this Saints team once. And I think they can beat the Saints again. And until the Saints win at home, I don't trust the Saints at all. So let's jump into this game. I don't even want to talk about the Bears because the Bears are so frustrating. I mean, this goes back to week 1. The loss against the Buffalo Bills, to me, was a tone setter for this entire season. So let's just talk about this game quickly. After a dismal first quarter for both teams, I mean, there was not a lot of good things coming out of that first quarter. And the first possession for the Bears was a turnover. You had Robinson pick off a Jay Cutler offering. It was tipped. Robinson able to get his hands on it and catch it before it hits the ground. Great pick, individual play by Mr. Robinson on that particular play to pick off Jay Cutler. Then 2 plays later, neck tune, only on neck tune. It fumbles the football. Saints are going in and jump on this Bears team immediately, and he turns it over, coughs it up. And so just like that, 2 turnovers, back-to-back possessions for both teams. It was sloppy in that first quarter. And so not a lot of good came out of that first quarter. Then you have a botched missed field goal by the Saints as they try to get on the scoreboard. And so finally, the Saints get on the scoreboard with a play on the first play of the second quarter. They finally move the football down the field again after having the football in scoring territory for much of the first quarter. You had the turnover by the Bears. You had the Saints actually put together a little bit of a drive. But again, that botched field goal attempt, and no points were gained by the Saints. So finally, end of the first quarter, they were putting together a drive. First play of the second quarter, they cap off a 7-play, 85-yard drive with a 9-yard Josh Hill touchdown on a bootleg, beautifully executed. He's able to dive into the end zone, 7-0 Saints on top of these Bears. Brees started out this game red hot, but then again, who doesn't shred the Chicago Bears defense, and who isn't red hot against the Chicago Bears defense? I mean, John Gruden alluded to the fact that if you put up any of the Super Bowl champion quarterbacks that have played against the Bears this year, put their numbers up against each other, you'd have a race for who had the best day against the Bears. Aaron Rodgers lit those boys up. He might have had 5 touchdown passes in the first half when they beat him up in Lambeau. What was it? 42-0, 50. Might have even been in the 50s at halftime. It was bad. Then you got Tom Brady and company. Remember, that was a game where Brady and them obliterated the Bears right before their bye week. I think that score might have been 38 to 10 at the halftime break. It was bad. That game got out of control. And this game here, Brees was 19 of 21 in the first half, including a 9-yard touchdown strike right before the half to Colston to make it 14-0 going into the halftime break. I mean, Drew Brees was carving these boys up. I mean, he really was. And it wasn't even... I look at the Bears and I just say, what the hell happened to this team? I mean, last year we were singing their praises about how Mark Trestman came in and he had Josh McCown looking like a viable option as a starter. They had those 2 big receivers and Alshon Jeffrey. Never, ever trust a man with 2 first names. And, of course, B. Marsh. He's done for the season with the rib and lung injury. And they just haven't been the same team this year that they were for stretches of the season last year. And I think the thing that's the most disappointing with the Bears is that, okay, fine, you're not good defensively. Okay, I get it. I understand Mel Tucker and that defense struggling. They don't have all the parts that you need. They don't get consistent pressure on the quarterback. They don't stop the run. All of those moves you made in the offseason to try to strengthen up the interior of the defense to stop the run hasn't really worked out yet. But again, when you're relying on rookies, you're relying on guys that don't know how to get it done at this level yet. So you have to wait and allow that to take shape. So I don't get mad when an Ego Ferguson or the young guy you drafted out of Arizona State doesn't come in and jump right into the fray and get it done immediately. That's to be expected. But what is disappointing for this Bears team is the fact that the offense isn't any good. And that was supposed to be the one thing that you were supposed to be able to rely on, is the offense getting it done, and the defense you're just hoping could do enough. I mean, this team was supposed to be like the team we saw earlier in the season that went to San Francisco and won, that scored 24, 28 unanswered points in that second half and come back to beat the San Francisco 49ers. That's the team we thought we were going to see. A team that defensively, you hope they could force a couple of turnovers. Offensively, they were going to score points and give themselves a chance each and every single week. That hasn't been the case. In fact, this offense has regressed. Jay Cutler is just lost. I mean, he's out there. He's there in body, But in spirit and mind, I don't know what the hell is going on with Jay Cutler. And that's what Tresman was brought in to do. Get the most out of Jay Cutler. That's why they paid Cutler all of that money, because Mark Tresman was supposed to come in and do wonders for him, like he helped with Rich Gannon when he won the MVP when he was an Oakland Raider. He was supposed to come in and do that for Jay Cutler, and it just hasn't worked. And so I think Tresman is gone after the season. I think Cutler might be gone after the season. I think there could be wholesale changes in Chicago after this season. But getting back to the football game, it's 21-0 after Breeze orchestrates a 13-play, 80-yard drive to start the second half and finds Josh Hill once again. And to me, this play that Josh Hill scored on microcosm of the Bears defensively, he's covered initially. Breeze is rolling out. And Tim Jennings, or I want to say it might have been Ryan Mundy. Ryan Mundy is with Josh Hill on the play, and he's following him. And then Breeze comes out as a threat on the bootleg. And instead of Ryan Mundy, who is on Josh Hill, instead of him staying with Josh Hill, because Drew Brees isn't much of a threat as a runner, if he runs, tell him to knock himself out. Because you have enough speed to stop him from getting to the end zone if you keep running with Josh Hill. Instead, he stops. He freezes. He allows Josh Hill to continue out towards the pylon and the boundary. And Drew Brees is able to find him. He catches it, walks into the end zone. And, I mean, that was easy. You were in the right coverage. You were there, and you let the man score a touchdown. And that's why this Bears defense isn't any good. No discipline whatsoever. And so that made it 21-0. At that point, I knew this game was over because, again, the Bears are struggling to score anything. They're struggling just to manufacture offense, and especially without Brandon Marshall in the lineup, going to be hard-pressed to find this team scoring points. Jay Cutler was throwing the football all over the place. Some guy named Pierre Warren came in the game and got 2 interceptions. It was all bad. It was all bad for the Bears. Your final score ends up being 31-15. Saints dominate this game start to finish. And they go to 6-8 on the season. They're now in first place in the NFC South. I still don't trust the Saints because they've won on the road before. They did it against Pittsburgh 2 weeks ago, went home and lost. I still don't trust them. I still have my money on the Atlanta Falcons. You win at home next week. Hey, I'm listening. Right now, my back is still turned. My arms are still folded, and I don't believe you. I don't trust you because I trusted you before and you let me down. So I don't believe you. But if you win next week, I'm listening. Go ahead. I'm listening. So I need to see it at home because that's where your money is. That's where your bread is buttered. You're not really a good road team. You're not fooling me. And when you get to the postseason, everybody's good. So you need to find a way to get it done at home. And if you can't beat Atlanta next week at home, then you don't need to go to the postseason. You don't. And that's generally how I feel. If you can't win at home versus Atlanta, then you don't need to go to the postseason. And that's that. So that's a big one next week. You got 2 games remaining, both in the division. Home for Atlanta, at Tampa Bay, Week 17. You win both of those games, guess what? You win the division. You lose either one of those games, and you could see this division slip through your fingers. So that's going to do it. And look, let me quickly say what I need. I think I basically said everything that I need to say about the Bears. Bears are now 5-9 on the season. They are lost. And again, I don't see this ending well for Mark Tresman. They've got in-house turmoil. You got Aaron Cromer speaking to the media about Jay Cutler. And I don't think he said anything necessarily wrong. It's just that you don't do that. That's backbiting. That's backstabbing. You don't do that. But when things aren't going right, these are the things that surface. Trust me, as a Redskins fan, I see it all the time. That's losing is the origin of all bad things in the National Football League. You rarely hear about bad things on a good football team. It's just rare that it happens. That's why they say winning is the best deodorant. It covers all of the stench and stink that goes on in the locker room. Trust me. You have fights all the time in locker rooms, but when you lose games and you're a bad football team, things like that are highlighted. When guys say things all the time that could be noteworthy, but when you're winning, let's sweep that under the rug. We got other things to discuss. When you're losing, I'm looking for a story. So won't you go ahead and say something crazy so I can run to my publication with it, report it, and have everybody talking about it, and Twitter buzzing and Instagram and all of those good things. Give me a story, because there's nothing good on the field to talk about. So we're searching for things off the field to talk about. And that's what's going on in Chicago right now. And there's not a lot of good with this football team. They're not good defensively. They're not good offensively. You don't get a spark from special teams anymore now that Devin Hester isn't there anymore. So there's nothing good coming out of Chicago these days. This is a bad football team, and wouldn't surprise me if they don't win another game this season. I believe you have Detroit again, and you have Minnesota to finish up the season. I think Minnesota's a better football team than you right now, even though that is a winnable game against Minnesota. Still don't see you getting it. I just don't. So we'll see what happens with this Bears team finishing up the season. But I think whether you go 6-10, 5-11, Mark Tresman is done. I think he's lost control of this football team. I thought the most telling quote from that game on Monday night was, at halftime, Lisa Salters asked Mark Tresman, does he think he's getting the most out of this team? Does he think he's getting the best effort he can out of his football team? He said, we'll see in the second half. So that means he doesn't even know if he's getting the most out of his players or not. And I can tell you right now, you're not getting the most out of your football players. So this team is a mess. They're a train wreck. And that train is definitely going off the tracks in the offseason, and changes will be made. That's going to do it for Bears Saints. I thank you for joining me here on the program. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here on this program in the Lab Room. I thank you for joining me. Come back as I start to jump into the Week 16 affairs. I'll see you as we continue to break things down here in the Lab Room. Have a good one. See you tomorrow.